Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the High Tech U Twitch channel. My name is Andrew, the co-founder of High Tech U, and if it is your first time dropping by the stream, we are so excited to see you, and you have come to our channel for an amazing stream, because not only today are you going to get the chance to learn about an amazing new program that you may not have been aware of, but also the opportunity to learn and practice some amazingly important skills that are important whether you're in the technology industry or any industry. And there couldn't be a more fantastic person to be facilitating this entire process with us today than Alison McKenzie, the executive director of ShEvalesco, which is, as I'm sure you realized, the amazing organization who is collaborating with us for today. So I'm going to pull Alison up on the screen. I wonder, can I can. Let me make that really small. I'm going to transition over there. Awesome. And Alison, I think you should be able to unmute yourself, question mark. But we shall see.
I am here. I am unmuted.
There we go. Awesome. So, yeah, I'm super pumped. We're finally doing this, Alison. How excited are you for today's session?
Oh, I'm wildly excited, as I am anytime I facilitate anything about anything.
I love it. There we go. Now we can both be on the screen together. So, Alison, I always do the same thing on any stream just to kind of get things working so I can make sure that nothing has gone terribly awry on the stream. So I'm just going to put on some sweet background tunes for a second and make sure that the stream is working. And then that will kind of give people a chance to jump on the stream. And if you're here and you're just watching, there is going to be some awesome interactivity in today's session, in today's workshop. So feel free, jump on into the stream chat. If you don't have an account set up with Twitch, this will give you a minute while we get set up here. Yeah, so I'm just going to throw on some tunes for just a quick sec, make sure things are working, and then we can get started. All right. There we go. Yeah, so I don't know. So one thing that I know we didn't talk about before, Alison, there's a little bit of lag between when we present and what people get. So I think it's like 10 seconds between like when you're asking a question. So it's like the worst facilitation ever because you've got to wait 10 seconds before there's any chance of an answer. Yeah, I guess everything seems to be working on my end. So yeah, I think maybe I'm going to turn it over to you and pull you up on the much bigger screen, and then you can kind of take the show because this is definitely ShEvalesco's show today.
Great, and I may ask you if you don't mind to help out with the chat a little bit if you could.
Awesome, I definitely can do that. So you are definitely not there in any way, shape, or form. Let me resolve that. There we go. Video. I will do some nice background magic where I saw. Oh, that's not magical. That's what we're looking for. And now I shall fix this. Oh, there we go. We have the technology, everyone. We have the technology. There we go. How do you feel? Is that good? Do you want to be bigger, smaller?
I think it's good.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so over to you. I'm going to mute my mic so people don't have to hear me, but you'll still be able to hear me, Ali, and yeah, we can take it away.
Okay, amazing. Thank you, Andrew. Hi, everybody. It's great to meet you, even though I can't hear your voice or see your face. My name is Ali. I am the founder and executive director of an organization called ShEvalesco. I'll tell you a little bit about it in a sec. Why we're here is we are talking about some key life skills, and the one today is assertive communication, arguably the most important skill that will serve you today, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 15 years from now, 50 years from now. It is a lifelong journey. So that's what today we'll focus on, and I really will ask for your feedback today in the chat. So keep an open mind and keep those wheels turning. I'll tell you a little bit about our weird name, because it is a weird name. It is also an intentionally weird name. The term ShEvalesco is actually a Latin word, and it means to increase in strength, to be able, to have worth, and to prevail. And that's what ShEvalesco is all about. We are looking to heighten life skill education, build confidence, build resilience, build financial literacy so that everyone can have the highest level of confidence in those assets as possible. And the content is really geared around sort of preparing you for the workplace, but in reality, it's things that serve you now in school, in your relationships with your family, with your peers. It's very transferable. And I will start with a quick land acknowledgement. So I am speaking to you today, and I'm very grateful to be speaking with you today from the unceded and traditional territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam Coast Salish nations. I'm very grateful to be here. Okay, here's where we're starting. We're starting with the basics of how this fits into your world. In our lives, we have a whole bunch of things around us that we don't have a heck of a lot of control over. So we are influenced, and when talking about assertive communication specifically, our ability to communicate, our role models, what we look up to is influenced by a lot of things, be it family, community, businesses, government, advocacy groups. We have things that are a little bit closer to us about how we're raised. So things like race, religion, ability, age, class, and you are at the epicenter of this. And the reason I bring this up is just simply to say that there is no out of the box perfect way to communicate for every single human being. That does not exist. We all lose our tempers in different situations. We all get very quiet and passive in certain situations, and we are all naturally assertive in certain situations. So I'm not here today to tell you, here's the 15-step method to be assertive. I'm here to tell you there are little tips and tricks that you may resonate with, that you may say, I can do that. Like, I need to work on that. That sounds great. And the outcome, this assertive communication outcome, is going to be very, very personal to you. So my goal at the end of this workshop is for you to be able to walk away with some little tips and tricks that you can use starting tonight to up that level of assertive communication. So communication 101, this is extremely important. I love starting with this definition because we tend to think of communication. We know how important it is, right? We know it impacts our relationships, personal, professional, how we do in the workplace. Communication is critically important. But we tend to think of communication as just what comes out of our mouths. And it is so much more complicated than that. So communication is really the verbal, out loud, and the nonverbal, meaning body language, exchange of ideas, feelings, opinions, wants, needs, and actions, a lot of things, in which the intended message is successfully delivered, received, and understood. It is so important to think of communication as this sort of holistic journey because it's not just what we say, it's how do we say it? Is the person understanding us, especially if you're trying to solve a conflict? It is also, do you have empathy for that person that you are speaking to or questioning? Do you have respect for them? That is the whole world of assertive communication and what we are going to talk about today. But just know it's a big, complex monster. It's a lifelong journey. There's a lot to consider. The really great news is that when we're talking about communicating assertively, having empathy, having respect, and we'll get to that in a second, makes hard conversations so much easier. So it's a really fantastic tool to have in your tool belt. So this is where I would love a little bit of feedback. And if there's none, that's okay. I can wing it. But I want to talk about challenging conversations, the tough ones. So this can be a lot of things. This can be an argument, a fight. This can be being treated in a passive aggressive manner or treating someone in a passive aggressive manner. It can be, a conflict with a stranger on the street. It can be anything, something that you think, I don't want to have that conversation. That's what I'm talking about here. So I've got 5 classes of people up here, very simply broken down into family, friends, strangers, peers, and people in positions of authority. The other thing I've got on the screen is a green zone, a yellow zone, and a red zone. So what I want you to think about is, of these classes of people, who is in your green zone? And by that, what I mean is hard conversation with that person, no problem. I can do that. Don't even think twice. Who is in your yellow zone? So yellow zone would be more, I don't love having this conversation. I'm a little bit uncomfortable, but I can get through it. And who is in your red zone? This is your assertive communication kryptonite, your weakness. This is, who do you just dread more than anyone else in the world having a hard conversation with, having to stand up to someone and say, no, I do not want that, or I disagree with you, or we need to do this differently. Who goes in there? So if we have anyone that's willing to share on the chat, and Andrew, you can read them out to me if you don't mind, because I can't see the window. Who might be in your green zone? Do we have any thoughts?
So we have a little bit of a lag, so we'll see if anybody throws it in there. But for those that can hear me, welcome to the stream. Efficacies, Own 3D, Sixers fan, Battlesnake Andrew. Also to Rhiannon, who sent me an email to let me know that things that they were that she's here and watching the stream. So welcome. Yeah. So feel free to throw your stuff in the chat if you're willing. If not, Alison has the amazing ability to read your mind from far across the internet.
Oh, I'm very good at that.
Very good. All right, so nothing's coming in on the chat.
Okay, no problem. So what's really interesting about this is that there's no right answer to the green, yellow, red zone. And that's because, and I'll say it 1,000 times today, this stuff is so personal. So what I see a lot here is I see friends. Friends is a great one. Often comes up in green and often comes up in red. And exploring that a little bit is really important. So when I ask someone, why is friends in your green zone? Why is it no problem to have a conflict with the friend? The answer is, well, we're friends. I've known them for a long time. I trust them. They trust me. I know that if we get into an argument, they won't walk away from me forever. So it's no big deal. But interestingly, we also see people that put that in their red zone, being like, if I get mad at someone or voice an issue with my friend, maybe they'll get so mad at me about it that they're going to walk away and not be my friend anymore. So it can really go either way. I find that with strangers, it's actually the same. There's a huge dichotomy between, some people put strangers in green because they're like, I can yell at anyone that I want on the street if I'm never going to see them again, don't even care. Whereas sometimes they get put in red because you're like, I don't know how to have a disagreement with a stranger. That's really scary. I don't know what they'll do or what they'll think or what they'll say. The one that most commonly comes up in red is people in positions of authority. So that would be someone like a boss, a teacher, a professor. One of the reasons for that is we are often navigating an age differential that can impact how powerful we feel and how comfortable we feel putting our voice forward. The other thing is that often these people have some level of control over something in our lives. So your parents, for example, have an ability to control whether you come and go and what you do. A boss has control over what you get paid and if you still have employment. A teacher has control over marks and grades. And it can be really scary to put issues forward and stand up for yourself to put people in positions of authority for those reasons. So as we move forward, as I said, this is super personal. So I want you to take note in your brain, who is in your red zone. So maybe it's a teacher, maybe it's strangers, maybe it's your mom, maybe it's whoever, but keep note of it because it is your assertive communication kryptonite, your weakness, your challenge that we're going to start working on. So log that one away. So I spoke to this a little bit already, but some of these challenging conversations are challenging for a lot of different reasons. They're pretty deeply rooted in us sometimes. We have a fear often of negatively impacting our relationship. So that's especially sort of peers, friends. When you're speaking to someone older than you or in a position of power, we often don't want to appear silly or dumb or uninformed. So we don't want to like really go to bat with an opinion because we're afraid of what the outcome might be. Another big one is we just don't want to get into trouble. And often we want to be polite and we do not want to be labeled as aggressive or rude and therefore keep our opinions to ourselves. Now, I'm going to take a moment here to talk about that and talk about what's called the pink box phenomenon. I don't know if any of you have heard of it before, but it does have implications to gender. And the idea here is that for a long time, and it can still actually continue to this day, we often see female identified youth, and this can also be applicable to gender non-conforming youth or non-binary youth, are put into a box. And that box is be kind, be sweet, be quiet, don't offend anyone, don't put yourself out there, just be sweet and calm, and that's sort of the box that you are put in. And then the fear and the implication from others when you take a step out of that box is that you are then labeled in a certain way: aggressive, mean, pushy, bossy. And this is a major challenge that female identified individuals all over the place struggle with. It is not true that there is passive and there is aggressive and there is nothing in the middle. Assertive is that pie in the sky, holy grail in the middle of those two things that we should all, every single individual in this world, be working towards. And that's what we're going to dive into now. So just know you can put your thoughts and your feelings and your opinions and your wants and your needs forward and still be calm and still be respectful and still have empathy and not be bossy or rude or mean. That's what we're working on. So I've said the word assertive approximately 32,000 times already, and it's been about 19 minutes. So let's talk about what this actually means. Assertive communication means standing up for your own or other people's rights. It's not always yourself. It means speaking calmly and concisely. It means listening to another person. And I mean actually listening, which is very challenging when you're having an uncomfortable conversation that you don't really want to have, like a fight or a conflict. It also means respecting the other person's thoughts and feelings. Something we'll talk about today is that when you go into a tough conversation and you're really, really, really nervous about it, your saving grace, the biggest trick up your sleeve, is respect-based communication. So things like asking questions, things like probing a little about like, what does that person think and why do they think that? It can really sort of give an olive branch or a peace offering to someone you are having a conflict with, and it can really help you navigate that tricky conversation. And it all comes from a place of respect. A couple of other things that assertive communication play a huge role in is directly stating your wants and your needs. So not being afraid to say exactly what it is that you want, and giving an honest no to the things you don't want. And also, I'll remind you calmly and concisely, that's also direct. So giving an honest no in a direct way without giving the 72 reasons that you can't do something. And I know that's something that a lot of people can identify with. It's very uncomfortable to just say, no, I'm unable to do that, and leave it at that. And that's an assertive move. Might be tricky with your parents. Wouldn't recommend that. The benefits of assertive communication. So we see a lot of very interesting science-based outcomes. This has been studied near and far. When a person is able to communicate in an assertive way, we see that they feel an increased sense of control over themselves and over their life, which is very interesting. They also experience an increased sense of connectedness to others. And that's no surprise because we are communicating in a way that is respect-based and empathetic. So of course, even with conflict, that is going to build relationships. So think about that with your boss. If you're able to still voice a concern or a problem, but do it in a way that you're working together and there's a lot of respect in that conversation, that is a wildly positive thing. And no surprise, People who can communicate assertively are better able generally to handle conflict, both in their personal lives and in their professional lives. We see increased resilience in the face of adversity. So something knocks you down. If you are an assertive person who can communicate what you need at that time, you are better able to get back up and keep going and do it as well as you were doing it before. And overall confidence is something else that we see. So massive benefits for confidence when it comes to communicating assertively. Okay, so this one I'm going to basically just talk through on this slide because I had some brainstorming stuff, but I think it's probably easier to do it this way. I want to talk about these 3 types of communication. You've heard me say the words already: passive, aggressive, and assertive. There is a very particular reason that we're doing this. It comes back to that personal journey of communication. Like I said before, there are going to be times when you communicate naturally in a passive way, naturally in a super aggressive way. We often see that with like siblings. And then sometimes in an assertive way. The goal here is not to be able to pick you up and put you into an assertive box and have you be that way for the rest of your life, because communicating assertively is literally a lifelong journey. I teach this and I still have to practice it every day to stay on top of it. It's a long learning process. So the goal here of outlining, what does passive communication sound like? What does it look like? What assumptions are made when you're communicating in that way? We are doing that so that you can pick up, oh, I do that. I do that all the time. Oh no. So know that this is not in any way a criticism. We do not fit perfectly into one of these boxes 100% of our lives. The goal here is pick up some tips and tricks. Pick up some situations where you're like, oh, I really, really do that. And that's where we can start to make some small changes. So we're working towards that holy grail of assertive communication. So let's start with passive. What does this sound like when we're looking at voice or tone? So typically what we see with passive communication is it's very quiet, very hard to understand. There's often when you're communicating with someone who's very passive, you're sort of having to do a big lean in to hear exactly what it is that they're saying. It can go 2 ways in terms of speed. Someone who's acting passively, maybe because they're very nervous or uncomfortable, can either speak extremely slowly and that they're trying to get a handle on their words like that, or they can go to like supersonic speed, which is where all of a sudden one sentence that you say has turned into 6 paragraphs because you don't take a breath between them because you're just trying to get this conversation over with as soon as possible. So for anyone that's listening, you know where you fall in a situation where you get really nervous. Other things with tone tend to be, as I said, quiet, either really fast or really slow, a bit hushed, sometimes a bit mumbly. So again, it's a bit hard to understand someone who's acting in this way. Now, body language, my personal favorite topic to talk about. Body language for a person communicating in a passive way. This is pretty personal, but there are some things that we see consistently. And one is body size. And I don't mean your actual body makeup. I mean what your body is doing. Communicating passively when you're nervous or uncomfortable in a conversation, we tend to get small. So the shoulders go up and in, sort of, you might sit on your hands, you might cross your arms in front of you, you might rock a little bit forward. We tend to make ourselves as small as possible and take up the minimum amount of space. Other body language signs that we see, very limited eye contact, fidgeting, so playing with something or looking like you're a little bit distracted. Very little arm gestures often, sort of because your hands are usually tucked or enclosed in some way. There's a lot of different things here. So think about yourself and when you might display some of those characteristics. And then the last one is assumptions. And this is kind of a nasty thing to talk about because we don't like to talk about what assumptions we make about people, but they're pretty logical. If you are talking to someone and they are not making eye contact, and they are fidgeting, and they are messing with something and fiddling and closed off in their body language, do you feel like they're listening to you? You probably don't. When in reality, that person is listening, they're just nervous. So how the vibe that gives off is actually something, especially in the workplace, something that we really need to be cognizant of is, what is my tone? What is my body language? What is that message that I'm giving to another person? It shows that I'm not interested and I'm not really listening, which in fact is not the case. So let's contrast that to aggressive. So we all know these people. We know what it's like to communicate with an aggressive person. What does it sound like? Aggressive communication is loud. It is in your face. It is loud. It used to be people who got right up in your face and were doing the close talking, and COVID has solved that, which is great. It's one of the only good things to come out of COVID. But this voice from a person who is acting in a super aggressive manner, it is loud and it is steamrolling you. Because a strong characteristic of aggressive communication is that that person is not listening to you because they are just waiting to keep talking themselves. So getting spoken over when you're trying to say something and someone just goes right over top of your voice, that's aggressive, generally. In terms of what it looks like, aggressive communication, again, can look different for different people. Generally, it is the polar opposite of passive, meaning that you are taking up a ton of space. And generally, you're not just taking up a ton of your own space, you're also taking up space of other people. So you're sort of expanding into their sphere in addition to taking up your own little bubble. We often see finger pointing. I don't know if anyone identifies with this. My dad does this all the time. When he talks to me, he just does this in my face constantly. Finger pointing. Usually the eye contact is rather prolonged. It's strong, but not natural. It sort of continues to a point where like, I want to look away, but I can't look away. And then we often see things like pacing, big arm gestures. I'm sure you can all identify someone on TV or in your life or in the news that communicates in this way, and it can be a real challenge. And some of the assumptions that we make about a person like that, I mean, it depends on you and what assumptions you make, but often you think that that person is not listening to you. They're maybe a little bit arrogant or maybe a little bit insecure. We're in a very fortunate place now just to speak business for a second, where this characteristic of aggressive communication, it used to be looked to as leadership, that's what a leader looks like, is someone who communicates in this way. You know, you would expect that the boss of a big company would be, you'd walk into their office and they scream at you and don't listen to a word that you say. That they used to be like, that's what a leader looks like. And that is changing, and it has changed. And it's changed in a very interesting way, that businesses are really moving towards empathetic leadership, respect-based leadership, meaning they want to foster a sense of community, of support, of collaboration between bosses and employees. And they understand that a better way to do that, and a better way to actually succeed financially as a business, is to have empathetic leadership, which is very, very cool. It's also a trait that we know that women, I'm not saying men aren't empathetic, but we know that women tend to be empathetic in their leadership style. And that's why we actually see a lot of these statistics supporting the fact that female-led businesses are doing like extremely well, especially when you're looking at those higher level, major companies. It's very cool stats that speak to all of this stuff. So empathetic leadership is the way of the world now, and that is a very positive thing. So let's talk assertive, the last one, the holy grail, the pie in the sky. This sounds calm and it sounds clear. So that's what's happening from a voice perspective, calm and clear. They generally don't sound like they're rushing, but they know what they're saying, and they're saying it in a purposeful way. It's usually loud enough that it is very easy to understand and hear, but you don't feel like you're getting screamed at. Body language, love it for assertive communication. Assertive communication body language is best described as open and firm. And what I mean by that is you are taking up your own personal space. Your feet are firmly planted, you're not pacing back and forth. Your head's held high. You have an open stance, and you're taking up your own space without taking up the space of those around you. There has been I'm a scientist by training, and so obviously I love to study all of the data with this stuff and see what literature is out there. My favorite thing about this is all the studies that have been done linking causally, meaning it causes, linking posture in terms of body language and confidence. And a few studies have actually found that it's not just when you're more confident, your body language is better and your stance is bigger and more open. It can actually go the other way around. So some of the literature indicates that if you are feeling super nervous and afraid and insecure and awful, if you strike like a power pose, which is basically your head is up, your shoulders are back, your chest is out, your body's opened up a little bit. If you are able to do that when you're feeling awful and nervous, it can actually increase your confidence just by doing that with your body, which I think is extraordinarily interesting. And beyond that, what we know just from a physiological perspective is when you open yourself up like this, you're getting deeper breaths into your body, increased oxygenation in your blood. Your breathing slows down, your heart rate slows down, it calms you down, which is likely what helps with that confidence when you're really nervous about something. So it may be depending on who you are, your natural tendency to close in on yourself when you're feeling really nervous and uncomfortable, but know that your body language can help you feel more comfortable. It's a very, very cool dynamic, and I love it. Love to talk about it. So the assumptions that people generally make about people that are communicating in an assertive way, leader, empathetic leader, I'll say it again. Often they're thought of as kind and respectful, smart. And by smart, I just mean they put themselves forward in a pretty direct and straightforward way. And so you sort of go, oh, you know what you're talking about. Just some of the words that we see coming up around this level of communication. So something to think about. Which of those things, maybe it's your voice and the volume at which you speak when you're nervous. Or maybe it's your body language and how much space you take. Maybe it's your eye contact. Maybe it's a tendency to fidget. What can we shift to get those behaviors a little bit more towards that assertive side? Okay, so we did this. This is my second favorite thing to talk about because it is so tangible, meaning it is so real and we can do things about this right now. And anyone who is listening to this is going to be very irritated with me after the slide because you are going to start to notice this in your speech all the time and it's going to drive you crazy. Sorry, not sorry. So there is a sort of study out there. It's around something called linguistic second guessing, which is just a phrase to indicate this tendency that we have as humans to use words, phrases, or tones that weaken what we say and decrease our credibility. So meaning sort of how seriously we are taken by others. An easier way to describe this is basically you have something to say and it matters to you, but you're shooting yourself in the foot because of the words and phrases that you're using, right? And we can work on these. So if you're listening along, I'm going to get you to do this just on your own. You don't have to report back. I'm just interested for you to know the answer to this. I'm going to read out 5 categories of linguistic second guessing. I'm going to describe them. And as we go, I want you to put a finger up and keep it up for each one that you identify with, meaning you're like, yep, I do that all the time. Okay. So the first one is soft verbs. So remember, this could be in text, like text message, emails, or out loud. So keep that in mind when we talk about these. Soft verbs. So those would be things like, instead of saying, I will do this, period, you are saying words like, I think, I'll try, I hope, I, I may. So ones that sort of give you an out because you're not really strongly committing to it. I think is a big one. Sometimes we say that when we truly don't know, in which, no problem, fill your boots, which say, I think, and be honest. But sometimes we, in fact, do know how we feel. We do know that fact. We do know what's going on. And we're still saying, I think. So that can go. The second category, so hold your finger up just for your own personal self if you do that. The second category is no value words. I like to call them garbage words. These are the fillers that we just put in because we don't want to take a breath or put a period in our sentence or take a pause. And so we fill our sentences with like, just. So they're not adding value to our sentences. They're just filling time. The third one is called uptalking. And uptalking is when you have a sentence that ends with a period, but instead your inflection makes it sound like it's a question. That's uptalking. That's a challenging one for some people. The fourth and arguably most Canadian is you are apologizing and you have done nothing wrong. I am the first person to say, if you have done something wrong, apologize for it. But when someone bumps into you on the street and you apologize, I understand it's in the Canadian DNA, but it's also a problem. I have a tip on this one that I will come back to because it is my favorite thing to try. The fifth, which is kind of an interesting one, it's you have something to say and you ask a question at the end that doesn't need to be there. So let's say my sentence is, I went for a run this morning. That doesn't really need anything else at the end of it, right? But instead, you sort of don't know how the person's going to respond to you. So you'd say, I went for a run this morning. Oh, did you know? Don't you think? Isn't that right? So questions at the end that don't really add value, but you're looking for a little bit of feedback from that person because you're not really sure how it's going to go. So these are just a few things that are so wildly common. And the reason I asked you to count is because when I do this with a group of 20, 30, 40 youth, the absolute minimum number that we ever come across is like, I do 2 of them. The average answer is 5 out of 5. So this is not to make you feel bad. I do 4 out of 5 of these all the time. It's just so that you can start to recognize, start to say, oh, I don't need that just in my sentence. I don't need to apologize for that. I didn't do anything wrong. I don't need to, ask, don't you agree at the end of my point? So just start keeping track of them. And they can be a great little shift right now that you can make. So here are some actual hard techniques that you can use. So the first tip that I have for you to up the strength of your language is to reread text. So if we're talking about, so not verbal, but we're talking about text messages or emails. But you are in an advantage because you write, and then you can stop whenever you want before you hit send and you can reread it, right? It's like getting a do-over. So reread those emails or text messages and replace or eliminate some of these things that we do not need. Now, this recommendation is great for you now, but more so it is a habit for you to get into for your future, for when you are in the working world and you need to communicate assertively to, make an impact in your workplace. There's ads all the time. I don't know if anyone's seen them for Grammarly that does this for you, but you don't need an app to do this. You can just reread your emails and make that language super firm. So remove those soft verbs, remove those unnecessary apologies, remove those questions that don't add value. Now for speech or in writing, don't forget the power and the strength of a period at the end of your sentence. If you identify with getting nervous and speaking really quickly or not knowing what you want to say in an email, so you've just got like 17 run-on sentences, it can be a really, really scary thing for us to stop and take a breath and keep going. It feels like an eternity, which is why we're scared of it. But doing that does a few things for you, especially if you're nervous or you're having a hard conversation. It allows you to collect your thoughts and get back on track. It also gives you a chance to take a breath, which is going to calm you down. And it is also just going to allow you to move forward in a more calm and collected manner, rather than rambling and starting over here and going to here with your topic and then going to here with your topic and then going to here with your topic. I'm sure you can all identify with that. So that moment of silence that to you feels like an eternity, when you stop to take a breath and collect your thoughts, I guarantee that other human being that you're talking to, not going to notice. So it's a really powerful way to get a hold of your language. My personal favorite is number 4, which is consider replacing sorries with thank yous. I have done this, I kid you not, 12 times just today. I keep a tally of how often I do this. It's amazing. So there are things that we apologize for that we really don't need to be apologizing for. We haven't hurt someone. We haven't wronged them. There's a perfectly reasonable explanation for what we've done, yet we still feel the need to apologize. So this one flips it on its head. So let's say you're going in to write a test and your friend texts you just as you're about to go in. And so you don't respond because you're about to write a test. And then by the time you get out of your test, your friend has texted you like 3 more times, being like, hello, why aren't you responding to me? Hello, hello, hello. Well, it's not really your fault that you didn't respond, right? Because you were writing a test. So instead of saying, oh, sorry, I couldn't get back to you for these reasons, you can say, oh, thank you so much for following up. And then continue on. It is a beautiful shift from, oh, I'm bad, I did this, I have to explain myself, to thank you for sending that next text message to follow up with me because you care so much. It's a really great shift. Another one, let's say someone's reading something that you wrote and they're like, oh, there's a mistake in here. Everyone makes mistakes. That's not a personal attack. Oh, sorry, I didn't realize I made that error. To, oh, thank you so much for pointing that out. Thank you for that clarification. Please try this. It is so great. It takes it from being all about us and our concerns and our insecurities and our nerves to recognizing the action and the thoughts of other people by thanking them. It is all around a beautiful trick. Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes left. What I'm going to do is just go through a few more actual tips with you to try to deal with some of those challenging conversations. So I want your brain to go back to your kryptonite, your red zone, who was in it, and think about why they are in it and the types of conversations you have that are so hard and why are they so hard, okay? So there actually is like a 6-step method to handling a hard conversation. And even if you can only pick one of these things out right now and hold on to it, do that, because every single one of these things will help you in an enormous way. So let's say you know a hard conversation is coming. Your friend said something to you a little while ago, and it really hurt your feelings. You really didn't like it. And so you have to confront them about it now. Like you have to be like, I really didn't like that you did that. And you know that it's going to be a tough conversation to have. So when you enter into that conversation, the best first step that you can take is to take a breath. We talked about this before with posture. When you take a breath and improve your posture a little bit, it's going to calm you down and it will likely make you feel that little bit more relaxed and that little bit more confident to move forward in this conversation. So taking a breath is absolutely a powerful way to start this, especially if you know it's coming. Sometimes we get blindsided. That happens. The second and the third I'll group together, and these are critically important. When you are having a tough conversation, you need to make sure you understand what's going on. And that sounds silly and trivial, but how many times have you had an argument with somebody or a debate or a conflict that it started off over here about topic A, and then all of a sudden it's an hour and a half later and you're still fighting, but now you're over here at like topic G and they're totally unrelated and you don't know how you got there. That's the communication part that matters, is when you are having a conflict or a challenging conversation, you may need to seek clarification, ask questions. You can say things like, okay, let me just repeat back to you what I think is happening here, or you're telling me that you feel this way. So repeating those questions back and asking more questions can really, really help you. And I mentioned this about 20 minutes ago. A lot of this is about respect-based communication. Even if you're furious and mad at this person, it doesn't matter. You need to have that baseline of respect to get through this in an assertive way. And by asking questions, it really helps you through that. It's like this awesome little wild card you can walk around with your back pocket. If someone is super livid with you and yelling, and you're able to say, can you tell me why you feel that way? Or, so what exactly is the problem here? Or can you explain which one that this happened with? Like, very specific questions. It de-escalates situations and it makes people know you are listening. You are listening to what I'm saying and you care about the response. And that in itself helps enormously. Now, the fourth step, this is hard. It's very, very hard. The fourth step is to categorize. And what I mean by this is, in a challenging conversation, you need to know where you sit. So, is this person, are you having a conflict because you did something wrong? That may very well be the case. And if so, you have to know that so that you can apologize and take action and make a plan going forward. That's absolutely critical. But maybe you have not done something wrong here. Maybe this is directed at you personally, but it's wrong. Then you're going to have to speak your mind about it and stand up for yourself. And that's where our ability to use our assertive questions, phrases, tones, words, language, that's where that can really help. But you're going to have a very different conversation if you know you messed up versus being like, nope, this is unfair. So we need to have a conversation about it. And then the second one I have on here, which is extremely important. We are emotional beings, every single one of us on this earth. And we tend to sometimes take things very personally that are not personal. Think about a dinner time conversation that's gone awry in your life that started talking about something like something in the news, no big deal. And all of a sudden it escalated because you felt attacked or somebody else at the table felt attacked. So the ability to separate this and say, okay, tensions are high. Everyone's feeling pretty worked up, but this is not about me. That can let you take a step back and approach this in a more calm, cool, collected, assertive way. And of course, number 5, when you are going through these conversations, employ all of the skills physically, verbally that we have talked about. Making sure you're taking breaks between your sentences, taking a breath, that you are speaking concisely, that you're making eye contact, making yourself a little bit bigger to increase that confidence. All of those things make a huge, huge difference. And then arguably, I would say the most powerful tool here is to reflect. Some folks are very fortunate that they've had adults, mentors, teachers in their lives that have reiterated to them the importance of reflection. And I cannot overstate it. If you are able to look at yourself a little bit critically after you have a tough conversation and say, wow, I think that's the best I ever did in a fight. I did well. I was calm. I didn't get emotional. I was pretty collected. That was awesome. Great. You know you're on the right track. Alternatively, you might look back on something and go, I cried and everyone else cried and now everyone's still crying and I haven't left my room in 2 days. I think I probably could have handled that better. It's a chance to look back and understand what happened. What did you do well? What did you not do so well? And how do we remedy this going forward? What steps can we take? Okay. So before we finish, I want to leave you with 2 examples. And I want you to think about, how would you manage these? And so I'll give you the first one, and then I'll give you some thoughts that might help. So the first example scenario is that you are working on a group project. You're working on an essay that has to be put together by a group of people. Each member of your group is responsible for completing a different section of that essay. You've been assigned the conclusion, and so you send it out to your group for review. The next day at school, your group is meeting to finalize that essay, and a group member says to you, "This conclusion is terrible. I hate it. I'm just going to rewrite it myself." That's an awkward thing to happen and a very uncomfortable conversation to launch into. Now, each one of you know how you would naturally handle that. It might be that you would say, "Okay, go ahead, write it. I don't care." Or it might be that you would get super mad and scream at this person. Or maybe your natural reaction is assertive. That would be amazing. But there are some things that you can do here to have a productive conversation with this person who seems like a bit of a jerk, but still navigate your way through it, aiming to collaborate with them to come to a conclusion. Because that's what being assertive is all about. You're working as a team, no matter how much you don't want this person on your team. So for me, after taking a breath, the first thing that comes to my mind here is questions. I would have so many questions because this person has given me no feedback, right? Nothing. So I would say to that person right off the bat, "Okay, thanks for reading that. I appreciate that you read my section. I'm not so happy with your feedback. Can you please tell me what exactly was the problem with it here?" Because there hasn't been any concrete feedback, right? You don't know whether it's like the content or the grammar or the punctuation or what's going on. And, if by asking that question, you are recognizing this person's upset. They don't like the content. You are also recognizing that if they do come back to you with, "Well, you know what, I can't like read it. It has no flow. The punctuation doesn't work." Then you can go, "Okay, thanks for your feedback. I can definitely go ahead and work on that." Alternatively, maybe the feedback is, "I just hate it. It's the worst. I hate the way you write." Well, you know what? The answer to that is, this is my portion of the project. I worked very hard on this and I'm very proud of it. And we're going to keep it as it is. So what I want you to know through this conversation is, you have an arsenal. You have a bucket of tools that you can use. Being open to feedback and adapting is a wonderful tool. Asking questions is a wonderful tool, but also being able to look someone straight in the eye and say, "I disagree with you, and this is mine, and this is how we're moving forward," is completely acceptable. You should feel empowered to stand up for yourself while still being respectful. It is something that each and every one of you have the opportunity, and I would say the responsibility to do, because you owe it to yourself. So, last one, family. This one resonates with me. I wonder whether it will resonate with any of you. You're sitting at the dinner table with your family. The conversation moves to climate change, and things start to get heated. You have a very different opinion from everyone else, and you feel extremely passionately about your opinion. A parent or caregiver has had enough of the debate. They're sick of it. And they say to you, "I'm so sick of you talking about things you don't understand. You are too young and you just don't understand how the world works." That's a pretty tough thing to say to somebody, because you feel undervalued because of what? Your age. That's not fair. This is a family situation. This can happen at work. This has happened to me at work. This is pretty common. So how do you handle that in a respect-based, collaborative, engaging manner? That's going to be pretty hard after a sentence like that. Something that I would say, again, it's phrases and tools to have in your back pocket for this particular comment, would be something like, as simple as, "I don't appreciate when you dismiss my thoughts because of my age. I really enjoy these debates and I like putting my opinions forward. It's really hard to do that when you're dismissing me because of my age." As a parent, a caregiver, that's going to be very hard to argue with when someone comes to you very directly with how they feel and that you caused it, right? So that's another thing for your toolkit is your I statements. I don't like it when you do this because of this. It makes me feel this way. When you're dealing with your personal relationships, your family, your friends, your peers, it can be really effective to use those statements when you feel like you have nothing else around you to help. You always have those statements, recognizing how you feel and that it matters because it does matter. Okay. So, what I will leave you with is a challenge. I challenge you for one situation this week where you encounter something tough. And it doesn't have to be like the most hard conversation you've ever had, but something that just makes you go, ugh, I don't want to have that conversation. Maybe a disagreement with a sibling. Maybe a friend says something to you out loud or in a text and it doesn't sit quite right. Maybe it's an argument with a caregiver or a parent. I challenge you to try one thing. So one change in language, one change in tone or volume of your voice, one change in eye contact. Maybe it's the amount of space you take up. Maybe it's taking a big, deep breath before having that conversation. Try one thing and see if it makes a difference and see if it felt natural or did it feel weird and awkward, and then maybe you need to try it again. This topic is a lifelong journey. We are all struggling to be assertive every day of the week. It's a great time to start, and you will only get better and better and better with time. I promise you that you will only get better. Now, that is all that I have for you. I am so appreciative of you joining today. My email address is there. It is there for a reason. If you have questions, follow-ups, you want something to read, I have like limitless things for you to read if you're interested in this topic, because it's literally all I do. It's my favorite thing. Send me an email and I will hook you up with some materials, a podcast, a book, whatever you're interested in. I would love to pass that on if this topic is of interest to you. So I am very grateful for everyone being here. Andrew, I don't know if you have anything that you want to finish off with for the group.
Myself so that people can actually hear me. That's amazing. That's so good. And it's awesome because we've been having people that have like popped in and out that I've never seen before, just kind of checking out the stream. So I hope that if you're on the stream right now, you practice some of these things. And if you're like, oh, I'm gonna forget all of this stuff, don't worry. This whole stream is gonna be uploaded to at least the High Tech U YouTube channel, so you'll be able to access it there. That link that was at the very bottom during the whole stream, or the ShEvalesco.ca, so that is all the links for all of this stuff is going to be contained there as well, so you can find out more information. And then I'm just curious, Ali, like, for anybody who's maybe on the stream, if they are in sort of the greater Vancouver area, what other kinds of like programs can they access through what you're doing at ShEvalesco?
Yeah, great question. So I would say no matter where you are. So if you're in Victoria, if you're in the greater Vancouver area, wherever you might be, we do workshops with groups. So for example, like a classroom or an after-school club or leadership group, our curriculum, so the topics that we talk about, assertive communication is one of like 50 topics. So if this resonates with you and you want more, you can shoot me a message and I can tell you about the other things that we offer. But we can come in and we can do workshops for you. In a post-COVID world, we can do them in person, and in a COVID world, we can do them on Zoom.
Oh no, speaking of Zoom, oh, there you go, you are there. Fantastic. So that's amazing. Thank you so much, Ali. Like, this is absolute gold. And I love what I tend to find is I'll be like, man, it was a pretty quiet group. And then it'll be like 30 people were watching the stream. So I'm super excited for all of those who came today. Definitely check out ShEvalesco programs. They're doing some amazing stuff here in British Columbia, and super excited accessible outside. If you're a teacher watching this stream, because I know we got a few on here, shout out to our career ed folks that are here watching the stream. If you want to find out and get in touch with Ali, you can reach out to me. You can reach out to her at that email address. And there's lots more where this stream comes from. So I guess maybe before we go, I'll turn the last word over to you, Ali. But on behalf of High Tech U, to all of the viewers, as always, thank you so much for being here. If you're catching this on YouTube, thanks for watching till the end. Ali, to you, thank you so much for partnering to do this workshop. It's so relevant for the tech industry, for school, for life, and it's so amazing to be able to offer it on this kind of a platform. I guess I'll send the final word over to you before I throw on some killer background music and finish us off.
Well, thank you, Andrew, and thank you to High Tech U and yourself for having us and hosting a ShEvalesco workshop. I really appreciate it. I would leave it how I leave every ShEvalesco workshop, which is be bold, build resilience, and know your worth. And that's all. I hope you all have a great rest of your week.
I love it. Thanks so much.